JB Dankwa had this to say about the NPP. The party's policy is to liberate the energies of the people for the growth of a property-owning democracy in this land, with right to life, freedom, and justice as the principles to which the government and laws of the land should be dedicated in order specifically to enrich life, property, and liberty of each and every citizen. Upon the foregoing bedrock, the NPP on Saturday, the 23rd of August 2020, under the leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, launched its manifesto in order to present itself to the good people of Ghana to be re-elected to continue to lead this country for the next 4 years. In the 2016 manifesto, the NPP presented to Ghanaians our determination to tackle the numerous challenges that our country is faced with and to rebuild it. We shared an inspiring vision to build a Ghana beyond aid. Rebuilding seemed an impossible task. There were doubts in the minds of many about our ability to overcome the challenges. However, in the course of our first time in office, we have made what seemed impossible a reality. With skill and experience, we have brought the Black Star to its fitting status in the Committee of Nations. With speed, we have made significant progress in restoring economic stability, improved macroeconomic conditions that affect the lives of Ghanaians and the success of businesses, stimulating growth and providing opportunities for job creation led by the private sector, supported by an improved and stable banking system. My name is Eko Vincent Assefoa, and I'm the parliamentary candidate for Old Tafo constituency. I'm your host for this show, Majority Caucus, JoyNews. We are also live on all NPP social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and the rest. Let's go for a short commercial break. You're most welcome. My name is Eko Vincent Assefoa, and I'm the parliamentary candidate for Old Tafo constituency. Today I have in the studios the Honorable Oppong Nkrumah. He is the Minister for Information. Before we proceed, I want to ask him one or two questions. First and foremost, in respect to the President's visit in the Volta region, and secondly, I know that the Minister of Finance just finished with his press conference as far as Agyapa is concerned. He may want to throw more light on it before he can move to the launch of the manifesto.
Eko, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, the President is in the Volta region. He's been there all day today, doing a number of things. He's met chiefs and people. He held a number of chiefs and people in Keta. And then he's proceeded to commission a number of projects, including school buildings, etc. And one of his key messages has also been to explain to the people of the Volta region that he solidarizes with them. They are people, and it is a region that, like all the other 15 regions, are dear to his heart. And in terms of development and progress, he extends that there as well, and that's why you've seen him there commissioning projects, etc. He's also been speaking to some of these, may I say, allegations that were thrown into the public domain, that he had sent the military there to, you know, chastise or attack, and intimidate people, or that, you know, this administration was of the perception that people from the Volta region were not Ghanaians. He's been speaking to that head on and dealing with the untruths therein. You do know, and I'm sure many of your viewers will agree with me, that our colleagues on the other side often whip up ethnocentric energies in this country when it gets to election times and seasons, especially in times when they are not in power, because it is an avenue for them to, you know, get their message across. And we have often spoken against it. We are one nation, one people with one destiny. And that's a message the President has been preaching, that he'll return to Accra tonight, continue with his business as well. Right.
Let me hear you on the Agyapa. I think that the Finance Minister also
Yes. The Finance Minister and his team and his deputy been doing a fantastic job at the Finance Ministry, you know, in the last 1.5 hours or so. I'm just coming straight away from there. You do know that on Tuesdays and Thursdays we have the Minister's press briefing. So today the Finance Minister, you know, took the mantle, and he was speaking essentially to the Agyapa Royalties transaction. First, showing clearly with evidence that it is not true that this transaction is opaque and rushed, because as far back as 2018, that was when we went to Parliament to put before Parliament a whole law called the Minerals Income Investment Fund Act, which spelled out how we want to go about this transaction. And if you give me a few minutes just to explain.
Right.
We get royalties from gold mines in this country. Right. A royalty, more or less, is a tax on mineral production,
right,
or natural resource production. So you have a concession, you produce, and then you pay a tax on it to government.
Right.
That tax that comes to government is split into two parts. There's a part that goes to the chiefs, and then there's a part that comes to central government.
Right.
The challenge is that the amount of royalties that come on a year-to-year basis fluctuates because these are private people operating. You don't know whether they'll produce or not produce next year, what the gold price will be, so it fluctuates.
The quantity and all that.
Yeah, so when you bank your hopes on it for your annual budgets, you run the risk of falling short of some money. There are countries in this world that have found a smart way to manage that risk. What they do is that they set up what they call mineral royalty companies. Right. So the company does a number of things. It sets up a vehicle to receive the royalties instead of the government waiting to receive it. You set up a royalty vehicle to receive the royalties. Now, when the royalties come, you split it into two. There's a part that is declared as dividends for the country or the persons who are supposed to receive the royalties or the shareholders of that company. Then there's a part that you reinvest in other mines in other places. That's the same thing we are doing in Ghana. So in 2018, we went to Parliament to set up an act to regulate it.
Right.
And the act, if you read Section 2, Section 3, Section 4, Section 35 of this act, it says quite clearly that we're going to set up what we call the Minerals Income Investment Fund, and they will now be the ones to receive the royalties for the government of Ghana.
Right.
It goes further to say that
How about the chiefs?
No, this is not the part that goes to the chiefs.
Right.
The part that goes to the chiefs has nothing to do with this. That one still goes to the chiefs.
Right.
And I'm very happy you asked that question because there are those who go out there telling people that it is the royalties that will go to the chiefs that we are taking. So the chiefs should rise up against us.
Right.
It's a campaign tactic.
Right.
But this has nothing to do with that.
Just the government's royalties.
Just the government's royalties. So we set up a Minerals Income Investment Fund. We said that it will receive the royalties and that it also now has the power to set up a company locally and internationally, which company can now be assigned the royalties, and based on the royalties that are going to come, front load some money to government of Ghana now, and then when the royalties come in, we share it with that company, and then thirdly, the final part, we reinvest it in other concessions. So from 2018, we put this together, we debated it in Parliament, there wasn't much to disagree with on it, and now the transaction is being put in place, and we've seen all attempts to whip up controversy around it. So the minister took his time, took journalists and the entire country through the entire exercise of where we are now. They are now left with the stage of putting together a prospectus, going on to the London Stock Exchange and the Ghana Stock Exchange, and then saying that they want to float a part of that company, Agyapa, to get some front-loaded money.
Right.
And then when the royalties come in, again, government of Ghana will have the majority share of the royalties that are going to come. So we are killing about 3 birds, actually, with one stone. And then as a fourth step, we now have a vehicle called Agyapa that will have money that can invest in growing other mineral concessions, not just in Ghana, but all over the world. So the effect will be this. If at first all that we were getting was an average about 150 million cedis a year from royalties, which were not predictable, we're going to, through the structure, get about 500 million upfront.
Right.
We'll still now get at least 51% of whatever part of the 150 that is coming that we choose to declare as dividends. And then we'll now still have a company that can invest in other mineral royalties and therefore grow the 150. So for all you know, by the time we are done, the 150 would have grown in the medium term to about 250, and it becomes stable. The last time somebody tried this was the NDC when they were in power with the road fund. But what they simply did was that they went to a bank and said, we have the road fund coming, UBA, give us money. And UBA said, I'll give it to you for 32%. And they took it. Simple as that.
Similarities of the 1.5 billion debt fund securitization.
Yes, they incurred a debt, then there was interest on it, and the rate itself was something we questioned. When we came to power, we didn't have access to that money.
Right.
We had to renegotiate that one down. So the minister has done a very good job.
Right.
Our expectation is that our colleagues in the media moving forward now, that they also have a very clear understanding of it, will help the education of the general public so that this attempt to create controversy around it finds its rightful place.
Right. Viewers, I have already indicated to you that on the 23rd of August 2020, the NPP and its leadership, led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic launched Manifesto in Cape Coast. Now, when you look at the front page of the manifesto itself, it reads, "Leadership of service, protecting our progress, transforming Ghana for all." Honorable Minister, what does this mean?
So, first of all, the whole concept of leadership of service,
right,
or what some will call servant leadership,
right,
service leadership,
right,
is very different from some others who believe, or the concept that presupposes that we are the ones who are in charge, and if you've not been to our level before, you can't even advise us or tell us what to do. I'm sure you recall prior to the 2016 election, the former head of state at the time saying that if you've not been president before, you don't qualify to criticize or advise or make suggestions to him. We are of the view that this is an opportunity to serve. So the leadership that we are providing is one of service. The president himself is a chief servant, supported by his vice president, his ministers, and the entire government apparatus. We are here to serve. And because we are here to serve, everything that we seek to do is aimed at touching lives, improving the quality of lives of people. And so the first point that we make in this manifesto is that we are here to serve. This is a leadership that focuses on service. The second is that we acknowledge that we have made progress as a country. Look at what was happening before 2016. Dumso was around, high levels of unemployment, the macroeconomy was in tatters, the real sector of the economy was declining. That's when growth came down all the way from 14%. Growth came down to 3.4%. First time in decades in our republic. This is the time when the government said we were so broke they had to go for an IMF bailout. Conditionalities were that they could not employ a lot of people, even in the public sector. And critically, they could not touch lives. They could not impact people's lives, particularly through social interventions. This is, and mind you, this is critical because this is a party that is left of center. This is a leftist party. This is a party that talks about social democracy and taking care of the grassroots. If you listen to their key persons speak, they create the impression that they care about the poor and the vulnerable.
The bottom-up approach.
So if for nothing at all, they are the ones who are supposed to be providing social intervention programs. But because of how badly they run things, they could not even afford to support the average Ghanaian. So this is the period in which they were cutting allowances, teachers' allowances and nursing training allowances, and were increasing electricity bills, for example, in that difficult period. We have made progress. If you look at the macroeconomy, significantly improved. Look at macro stability, look at inflation, look at growth. Until COVID hit us, we were doing average about 6% thereabout growth. Look at interest rates that have come down. So if you look at all of these and look at the real sector, agric, industry, services, all inching upwards, we have made progress. We have learned in this country that whenever we give power to our friends on the other side, at the end, they take us down. Take the year 2000, when Jerry Rawlings was leaving power, and John Agyapa Royalties was assuming the reins of power by 2001. We all saw how he rebuilt this Ghanaian economy. That's when they used to talk about Ghana rising. Fast forward the clock, in fact, even President Mills, part of the NDC administration of 8 years, President Mills, in his day, if you look at his economic data, as compared to what President Mahama then ended up with, it means that what President Mahama did was to collapse the little that President Mills managed to even hold up. All the numbers speak for themselves. I don't want to bore your audiences with a rattling of numbers. But we found out that at the end of 8 years, cumulatively, they had brought us down. And that's why the president makes the point that we have literally, or they had literally rewound the clock, and we had to now start all over again. We've started, we've come far, we've made progress. We need to protect this progress. The only way to protect this progress we have made is to keep Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and the MPP administration in power. And I say this in all humility, because we have seen before our very eyes how one administration can say something like free SHS will not work, and another will say that it will work. I'm going to put about 1.2 million people in school. The only way to protect that is to keep it in the hands of the vision bearer. We have seen how one administration says, you know, we'll give fertilizer for free, nice promise, and it doesn't happen. And the farmers say, if you give it to us for 50%, we like it. And we do that, and our great output begins to grow. But the only way to protect all of these gains we've made is to keep that servant leader, Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in power. So the second thing we talk about is that this manifesto is a call for us to protect our progress. And if you look at the tail end of the manifesto, particularly the infrastructure and transformational agenda, we want to transform Ghana, not just for a few, but for everybody. This is the paradigm with which we went into writing this manifesto in its various sectors.
Now, I get a point that in 2000, when the NPP took the reins of government, that is in 2001, clearly the economic fundamentals that we came to meet were in tatters. Now, in 2008, when we were leaving government, we also left the reins of government to the NDC, only for them to leave it for us once again in 2016, and they've brought the economy on its knees. Clearly, the NPP has shown the way that when given the opportunity, we will be able to govern this nation for the development of the laws of the people. It is important for me to rehash what the Honorable Minister said. In 2016, when we took the reins of government, clearly we had declining economic growth. We also had high and constantly rising inflation and interest rates. We had rapidly depreciating currency. We had low investor and business confidence. Again, high unemployment at the point in time where we had unemployment graduate association and what have you. Again, we also had poorly regulated and poorly managed financial services sector. A collapsing national health insurance scheme and re-emergence of the cash and carry system. We also had a collapsing emergency healthcare system with only 55 semi-functional ambulances in the country. We also had 5 years of disrupted electricity supply that is doomed with this associated cost. We also had average annual increase in electricity prices of 45% between 2010 and 2015. The minister will also highlight some of the figures for us. I am particularly interested with the economic growth numbers. I'm also interested with the inflation figures. I'm also interested in the exchange rate figures as well, so that the Ghanaian people will know where we took the reins of government from 2016 and how far we have been able to do, especially before COVID started.
So, Eko, the economy matters. Sometimes people say, oh, you people like this 3%, 4%, 5% to be too much. But you see, without a strong economy, you cannot do anything.
Right.
Take COVID, for example. Our ability to invest significantly in the logistics that we've used to fight COVID is hinged strongly on the fact that we have grown a resilient economy. Right. If you have a weak economy and you are hit by a crisis, you can't respond. Just to touch up a few of the data points, because I like to deal with a few other issues.
Right.
Fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the gap between your revenue and your expenditure on an annual basis. It is measured as a percentage of GDP. So the fiscal deficit, when we assumed office, about 6.8% of the rebased GDP in 2016. Brought it down to 3.8 in 2018, 4.8 in 2019, excluding the cost of the financial services sector. And the financial services sector alone, the cleanup is costing us at least about 21 billion.
Right. Excluding
that one, about 4.8, as compared to the 6.8 that our friends who did not have some of these challenges left us. If you take the primary balance, it's the difference between your tax revenues and your expenses, excluding interest payments and debt servicing. So that is what shows us whether you are having to borrow to pay some of the key expenditure items like salaries, etc. Primary balance, for example, has recorded surpluses 3 years in a row. Prior to that, our primary balance was a negative.
Right.
So now we know that if you put the economy in the hands of some persons who are very competent at it, they're able to raise enough money to pay our basic expenses and to take care of us. We don't have to borrow to service our debts and borrow to pay salaries, etc. I spoke about inflation earlier, 15.4. That's the rate at which prices were increasing. Right. It hasn't come to zero.
Yes.
It hasn't come to zero. But prior to COVID, it had come down to about, I think about 7.6.
You have halved
there.
it.
We had halved it.
Right.
It came down to about 7. It is COVID that, because of the challenges it has brought, has taken our position out of gear. And you can go on and on and on, including debt, for example. You know, between 2008 and 2012, Ghana's debt stock increased by 267%. Think about it, 267% increase between 2008 and 2012. Between 2012 and 2016, the debt increased by 243%. This is the Mahama era, 243%. Now, the increase from 2016 to 2019 was 76%. Yes, the debt stock, the nominal CD debt stock has gone up, but by 76%. as compared to the 267% or the 243%. So you find our friends on the other side say, hey, the debt stock has gone up, the debt stock has gone up. Our debt stock has gone up by 76%. Yours went up by 267% in the first tenure, that's President Mills's tenure, and 243% in President Mahamad's era. So the two parties or the two administrations are not the same. Take debt to GDP ratio. That means if you look at our total debt stock as compared to our GDP, so the total amount of money we owe as compared to the total productivity in the year, i.e., if all our debtors today said they were collecting their money from us, will we be able to produce enough to repay? Debt to GDP ratio increased by 49% between 2008 and 2012, and 19% between 2012 and 2016. In our tenure, as at 2019 ending, it had gone up only by 3.9%. It's not even up to 5%. So yes, it has gone up. You can always make an argument that the debt stock has gone up. But it's 3.9% as compared to their 49% and their 19%. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said from the macroeconomic point of view. But all of that, most importantly, is supposed to translate into your ability to do things to touch lives. I've been making an argument recently that if all you can say as a political party is that we did infrastructure. Infrastructure alone does not win elections. You need to touch people's lives. You need to do things that impact people's lives directly. If you do 10 or 15 signature infrastructure projects across the country, what we are saying is that's a first step. We have done more infrastructure than the NDC did. We've demonstrated about 17,334, and as we've updated the website, it's now gone beyond 18,000. The NDC and some media houses have taken delight in picking some 5 or 6 or 8 and saying that, oh, we went here, this one wasn't there, we went here, this one wasn't there. We are talking about 18,000 projects. If you say that even 1% of it is not true, which we are checking, because we've also seen people come up and say, but what you are saying is not true. Some of the road projects they've mentioned as not true. People in these areas have come forward with videos and photos to say that, but this is true. So we are checking those claims. But what we are saying is that we've done about 18,000 infrastructure projects across the country. We still haven't heard the number from the NDC. When you say, they say Green Book, what is the number? You can't seem to figure out what their number. And we've challenged them to also publish a compendium of their infrastructure projects in their first term across the length and breadth of this country. They haven't been able to do that, even as at now, as we speak. We are saying that in addition to the infrastructure, we have touched lives. When you go to education, we have touched over 1.2 million lives, free SHS alone. When you go to health, if you look at the number of people we have recruited in the area of health alone, I'll find the number for you. To come there. Yeah, health and medical personnel, over 74,000. Okay? In fact, let me just go through these numbers. In terms of touching lives, jobs, we argue that we've done about 2 million jobs. The public sector alone has done about 778,706 jobs. And the formal private sector, that one, the way you check it is just by going to SNIT. Over 267,000. If you put the two together, it's about 1 million jobs. Okay? Now, if you do a breakdown, if you put the two together, you are hitting about 1 million jobs. Then government job creation programs themselves have also created another about 1 million jobs. That is how you come to the 2 million figure. And let me go through the government job creation programs. The Ghana Commercial Agri Project alone is employed about 11,431 people. The Outgrower Value Chain Fund, the OVCF, the annual average is about 7,254 people. National Identification Authority alone has employed about 35,380 people. Then the National Entrepreneurship Innovation Program has given support to about 92,000 people who have literally created their own businesses currently. Go to the Nation Builders Corps. That figure everybody knows, 100,000 people. Throughout my adult life, I have never seen, and I humbly ask any of our colleagues out there, whether in the media or civil society or in the opposition, tell us the last time you saw a government program that employed 100,000 people on a single day. It happened before my very eyes at the Independence Square. That is Adudan Kwaku for you. Before Planting for Food and Jobs, annual average estimate about 762,000. You put all of this together, that sets you about 2 million jobs. And the breakdown, the public sector jobs, okay, 84,000 under the forest plantation program, 65,000 are under health and medical personnel, and then the 74,000 that I talked about, teachers and non-teaching staff. 6,718 are lecturers in tertiary institutions, 184,000 are employed through the YEA. So the kind of work that has been done in terms of touching lives is amazing.
There's also a financial clearance for the Ministry of Education to also recruit about 26,000.
Yeah.
So clearly we are getting to 100,000.
That's your home baby.
Absolutely, that's my backyard. And so clearly for a period of 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, the Ministry of Education has employed almost 100,000 people in the sector.
Compare this to 2014, 2015, 2016, where the administration went under an IMF program and could not recruit.
Absolutely.
There's a difference between the two administrations. So we humbly call on Ghanaians, as we are getting into this election period, to consider all of these issues and to retain Adodankwa Akufo-Addo. We also call on our communicators across the country. I know that some persons like to provoke them into, insult bouts and name-calling bouts, but we call on our communicators across the country. This manifesto, as we have published it, is rich with material. And if you take your time to master the material, you have a lot of good messages to preach to the people of Ghana. Now,
this election is going to be about the youth. So clearly, if the NPP government can boast of the creation of over 1 million jobs, it clearly tells you that the youth of this country is going to reward the NPP. Don't forget that in the education sector alone, about 1.2 million Ghanaians who are youth have enjoyed from the free senior high school education, something that hitherto they could not enjoy, especially because the SWA government never believed in the implementation of the free senior high school education. Now, we will go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'll allow the minister to touch on the cleaning up of the financial service sector. It has been one of the topical issues that have been discussed across board, and people think that, especially people from the NDC, are proposing other means that they could have cleaned the system. Clearly, we had the opportunity, or they had the opportunity from 2012 to 2016 to have cleaned the financial sector, yet they failed to do that. Let's go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, you will listen to the Minister of Information. You are most welcome. My name is Vincent Asifo Jr., and I'm the parliamentary candidate for Volta constituency. I have in the studios the Minister of Information, Honorable Oppong Nkrumah. There's no doubt.
Incidentally, you know my name is Vincent as well.
Oh yes, you told me at that time. Same Vincent Depot. There's no doubt that in 2016, when the NPP took the reins of government after that election, we inherited a very weak and fragile financial sector. I want the minister to speak on this particular issue and what the NPP has been able to do as far as the cleaning of the financial sector is concerned.
So, let's go back to the narrative that some persons have tried to carve and sell to the people of Ghana.
Right.
That the Akufo-Addo administration has collapsed banks and financial institutions.
Right.
And has made people lose their jobs. Is that true or not? From 2012 to 2016, the International Monetary Fund kept doing what they called an asset quality review of the financial services sector. If you study the financial services sector, they generate liabilities to themselves. So they are liable to people. That means they take people's money, deposits. Then they lend it out to create what you call assets. So like loans, etc. They are assets on their books. So at any point in time, when you look at their books, they have what they call asset and liability management, ALM. Now, you can have assets that are totally useless assets on your books. So we can come to your books and say, oh, you have taken people's money, 100,000, and you've generated loan plus interest of 200,000. So it appears as though the books look good.
Right.
But in essence, that 200,000, they are dead loans. They are not going to come back. Some of the companies have collapsed or the people who borrowed have run away, but it's on the books. So the IMF caused us to do what we call an asset quality review. Let's review the quality of assets. And it found out that a number of financial institutions, including banks, had so much toxic assets on their books that they had collapsed. They were just nice buildings there with people in them. But they could not even find liquidity to run. So what the government was doing was that it was giving them what they called emergency liquidity assistance. Emergency liquidity assistance. So every month they'll give them some money. So when you go for your money, they'll find something for you, then they'll find something to pay themselves. But the real deposits they took is gone. It's emergency liquidity assistance that they've been living on. And the International Monetary Fund and the international organizations kept telling the Mahama administration that you have to do something about it because it is a cancer. It's going to eat up the whole financial system. There can be what you call the contagion effect. If you go back to 2016 State of the Nation address, President Mahama admitted this. In his own words, he admitted it and said that it was as a result of the failure of the central bank. That is what had caused all of this in the financial services sector, particularly in the specialized deposit-taking institutions. But by the way, Echo, in all humility, we did not appoint the governor of the central bank.
Right.
His administration did. So if you appointed a central bank team that failed to supervise the sector, and the sector had now grown cancerous, you don't get to run away from it. So he admitted it in 2016 and said that they were going to pass some new legislation and things to try and clean it up, Deposit Protection Act, etc., to clean it up. But the cancer didn't go away. When President Akufo-Addo appointed the new governor in his team, they also looked at it, looked at all the reports and said, they have to resolve the sector. So how do you resolve the sector? They said they need to revoke some of the licenses because an organization that is dead and is only living on emergency liquidity assistance, you have to revoke the license and let a bigger organization that is alive assume it. So they did what they call purchase and assumption transactions. 9 banks, in the end, 23 savings and loans companies, 386 microfinance companies, and 53 other financial organizations were affected by the time they were done. Deposits that belong to 4.6 million Ghanaians. And I want your viewers and your listeners to take some time and think about it. 4.6 million Ghanaians deposits, totaling at least about 21 billion Ghana cedis had been squandered or had become toxic assets. So when the new governor and his team were appointed, they wrote up the whole bill and said, government, we are going to have to do this. And government said, go ahead and clean it up. And they went ahead to clean it up. In the case of the banks, they came to government and said, the law says that we should appoint a receiver. What the receiver does, and sometimes people don't understand, what the receiver does is that he takes over the company from the managers. Then he tries to recoup the assets to pay for the liabilities. So sometimes the receivership takes a decade or more. President Akufo-Addo said, we can't wait for that. So when you do the receivership, I will pay while they try to collect the money. And that is how come he's been paid. So far, he's paid 21 billion Ghana cedis. Here's what has happened. For those in the banking sector, you will not have heard anybody say his funds are locked up because the new banks that took over, CBG, and then I think Ghana Commercial Bank that took over, ring-fenced all of it, government paid, and so everybody has his money there. For the specialized deposit-taking institutions, up to about 96% of people have been paid their money. They were paid in a combination of cash and bonds. People are not happy with the bonds. But essentially what the bond was that it was a paper from government that this amount of money is here and you can redeem it over a period. If you want it now, you can discount it. People have said they are not too happy about it, but at least they've been paid as compared to all of that money going down the drain. Then there's about 4 to 5% that they are trying to complete and pay. Apart from that, then there's the asset management companies. That is where they have not done the payments now. Currently, they've made available about 3.1 billion to them that SEC should finish the work and pay. Part of the problem they have is that there are companies there that are not cooperating with them. And so it's difficult for them to complete the validation. But at least some money has been put on the table for them already. In the end, there were 10,000 jobs in the financial services sector, these companies that were affected. That, in my understanding, they were gone already. The jobs were gone because the companies were gone. They were just living on emergency liquidity assistance. Because of the intervention, 5,400 of those jobs were saved. Imagine all those 10,000 jobs haven't been lost. But we've saved 5,400 jobs. We have saved 21 billion Ghana cedis that belong to 4.6 million people. Can you imagine 4.6 million people losing their livelihoods? Even the few that are left, you see the kind of agitation for their locked up funds. Can you imagine what it would have been with 4.6 million people? So a lot has been done there. We need to support the Central Bank and the Security and Exchanges Commission to complete the exercise. We need to thank government for putting up this money. In the previous era, in President Mahama's era, when about 80 of these specialized deposit-taking institutions collapsed, how many did he pay? 0. But today, you see him trying to make political capital out of it. We believe that Ghanaians don't have a short memory like he thinks and will not be swayed by some of these promises that are not credible.
But Minister, you remember that in 2016, when the MPP, in fact, from 2008, when we started promising free SHS, the NDC said we can never do it.
Yes. They said if it was possible, Nkrumah would have done it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in 2016, when we mentioned one district, one factory, they said we cannot do it.
Yes.
One village, one dam, they said we cannot do it.
Yeah.
2020, we went to Cape Coast, and we are now saying Cape Coast Airport.
Yes.
Are we going to do this?
You know, if you look at the infrastructure part of the manifesto, we talk about a harbour for the central region, which is a fishing harbour for Cape Coast.
Right.
And then we talk about an airport.
Right.
And you say it's not possible.
Right.
I'm disappointed in those who make that argument, and I'll tell you why. You know, the first time conversation about the Cape Coast Airport came up, it started around 1997. In fact, I will say this for the first time on your TV show. The first feasibility study, as my research has found, on the Cape Coast Airport was done in September 1998 during the tenure of President Jerry John Rawlings. This was before the 2000 elections. Today I brought a copy of it. This is the Central Regional Development Commission, CEDICOM. This is their feasibility study on the Cape Coast Airport.
So this is how many years ago? About 22 years ago?
1998. It was done by Aye & Aye, Consulting Engineers and Environmental Scientists.
Right.
Post Office Box 16832, Accra, North Ghana, with their fax on it and their email at the time on it. Let me just read you just a bit of the executive summary.
Right.
The government of Ghana's Vision 2020, with its outward-oriented economic strategy, makes the development of domestic air transport very essential. This is 1998. The government has recognized the importance of the private sector interest in the attainment of the objectives of Vision 2020, and to facilitate private sector involvement has adopted a liberalized skies air transport policy to deregulate aviation in the country. It has also been recognized that each region should be encouraged and assisted to build its own unique comparative advantage to contribute to the overall development of Ghana. If you go to paragraph 4, it says CEDICOM is a project initiator promoter. This was the Central Regional Development Commission. It intends to construct the airport through soliciting for equity partners and loan stock. It intends to offer land as its equity for the construction. CEDICOM's doors are wide open to interested private or public sector investors. And it goes on and on to show the cost, the various scenarios, etc. It's all here. What we have done since then, as the president alluded to, not just here, even Koforidua and a few other places, is to look at these numbers and adjust them for present value, because from 1998 to now, times have changed. But one thing that is significant between 1998, when the NDC themselves were the first to do a feasibility study on it, and now, is that the traffic numbers into the central region, into Cape Coast, have gone up.
Right.
If then there was a justification then in 1998 to build an airport in Cape Coast with the traffic numbers at the time, how can you make an argument to my mother's kinsmen in the central region that the numbers don't justify
22 years
and that
on.
it is not worth it in the year 2020? How can tourism traffic alone is about 310,000 people going in there just for tourism. Before you add to it the tens of thousands going to university and coming out, the tens of thousands of parents and students who are going in there because of the enclave, the catchment area with schools. So yes, it is feasible. Yes, it is something we are interested in. We believe that the last part of our manifesto, transforming Ghana for all, is not about building 1 or 2 interchanges in Accra. It's about building major infrastructure projects across the country. In our first term, about 18,000 and counting that we are accounting for. And I see some nitpicking at the edges that this 3 is not here or this 4 is not here. We're talking about 18,000 projects. I argue that we can discount it for you, but you still find about, what, 18,000 or 17,000 projects. Bring your list and let's go through. And we are going beyond that to say that across the country, you need to also put a project that help the country to open up, including what we are contemplating for the central region.
Now, we have 2 minutes to go, but let me be a bit biased. Now, in 2015, the National Development Commission brought out a report that suggested that because of the unpaid amount as far as the capitation grant is concerned, people or students were not going to school. We had arrests of about 8 million Ghana cedis that the NPP government came and paid. In fact, it was in the handing over notes of the NDC when they were leaving office. Now, in 2017, we have also implemented the free senior high school education, apart from the payment of the capitation grant, which means that we have not left the basic education to rot. Now, the NPP government is also promising that at the tertiary level, the poor can also go to school.
Absolutely.
And they are now introducing
and
a
how we are
scheme.
doing it is that we are going to give you a student's loan for you to embark on tertiary education if you are one of those who cannot afford it yourself. You don't need a guarantor for that. Your national ID with your biometric data is enough of a guarantee for you. And when you complete and you start work, then you start paying. In America, in other parts of the world, you are given a student loan to fund your education. And then when you are done, you pay out of your salaries and your income.
Right.
Why? Because if you read the beginning of our manifesto, it is an old principle that J.B. Dankwa laid down. It says that this party's policy is to liberate the energies of the people for growth of a property-owning democracy. We believe that if you do not liberate the energies, the creative potential of the people, they can't do much. How do you do that? You invest in human capital. And that is why we did capitation grants. That is why, like you've rightly said, we have done free SHS, because people should not be limited because their parents cannot pay to go to school. And that is why now at the tertiary level, we are saying that if you qualify, and unfortunately you cannot find the funding to pay for it, through this option of the student's loan, we will support you so that you can get tertiary education. So for me, this is free tertiary education in a particular format, where you get to access the education and then you pay for it when you exit school. And it is in a firm accord with the principles that were laid down by Dr. J.B. Dankwa, which forms part of the pillars of this political tradition. And that is why somebody like Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has never deviated from it from 2008, that he started talking about investing in human capital through free senior high school. Today, he's done that one, and he wants to go a step higher. We humbly ask the people of Ghana to support this bold vision so that we can liberate the energies of the Ghanaian for the future.
Is it proper to say free SHS? And again, tertiary education, the OID card.
The OID card, the passport.
Grateful. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister of Information, Honorable Oppong Nkrumah, who is also called Vincent. And my name is Vincent Ekowasefo Jr., and I'm the parliamentary candidate for the people of Volta.
Soon to be a member of parliament yourself.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be a junior in parliament. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.